guys, it's Maddie, and today I'll be doing my October wrap-up. So let's just get right into the stats. So I read 11 books this month. 11 books. I'm still kind of in shock. I have not read that many books in ages. I'm so proud of myself. My record for books read in 1 month is 12, so I was this close to breaking my record, but I just couldn't. But I am still so glad I managed to read that many books. I'm still kind of in shock because of it. And I read a total of 2,961 pages. A lot of pages read because I read a lot of books. One book was released in 2015, one was released in 2005, two were released in 2006, one was released in 2016, one was released in 2004. Actually, two were released in 2004. Two were released in 2017. One was released in 2014, and then I also have another 2015. So, lots of varying release years going on here. I read 3 dystopian books, 5 contemporary mangas, 1 magical realism book, and 2 fantasy books. All the books I read this month were written by female authors. I had 7 5-star books, so obviously I had a fantastic reading month. 2 4-star books, 1 2.5-star book, and 1 1.5-star book. 9 of the books I read this month were a part of a series, so I read a lot of books a part of a series this month. And 2 of them were standalones. I read 1 adult book this month, and the rest of them were all young adult books. 6 of the books I read this month were rereads. I've been rereading a lot lately, so there's no surprise there. I participated in 3 readathons this month. The first one was the Spookathon, where I read 2 books. The second one is the Get Graphic-a-thon, where I read 5 books, so that was a big success during that readathon. And one was the Bookbusters readathon, and I read 1 book for that. Out of the 7 books on my original TBR, I read 5 of them. So I read most of the books on my original TBR, which I'm super proud of because I always tend to stray away from my set TBRs, so I'm really happy about that. So let's just get into the books that I read this month. So again, I'm going to be sharing these books in order from least favorite to my most favorite book of the month. So my first book I have to share is Wild Beauty. I got this book off of NetGalley, so I got an ARC of it. And I was super excited to get a book off of NetGalley because I hadn't gotten one from NetGalley in so long, so that was awesome. But unfortunately, I got a book that I didn't end up liking. So this book is about a family of girls who live in this area that they're bound to, and they have the power to grow flowers out of the ground with their hands. So they produce a whole garden around them. It's a very beautiful setting, which I really like that about the book. But this family is cursed because whenever they love someone, that person disappears. And that concept kind of intrigued me to read the book. However, I don't think this book was executed really well at all. I really could not connect to any of these characters, and I think that's because none of the characters were developed at all. I think this book focused more on the setting and the descriptive writing more than the plot and the characters, and that was a huge deal breaker for me because I'm someone who really loves character-driven plots, and I really love engaging plot points, and this one had none of that. I cannot even tell you who any of these characters are because you never get to know them, and that was really disappointing because I really wanted to love this book because the concept sounded so cool, but the way it was executed was just not done well at all. The only reason I gave this book 1.5 stars is because the writing is really beautiful. I love the way this author writes this book because she's really good at creating vivid settings, but you can't have beautiful writing and a very poor plot and characters. So that was the deal breaker for me. But I would say if you do love descriptive settings more than plot points or characters, you will love this book. It just was not the book for me, and I'm really disappointed that I didn't like it. And I ended up, again, giving this book 1.5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was my TBR jar pick of the month, and I'm really happy that I finally got to a TBR jar pick because I had been failing at that these past few months, and that is The Queen of the Tearling by Erica Johansson. This is a book I just kind of had mixed feelings on throughout the whole thing. So what this book is about, it's a fantasy adult book about a girl who is supposed to become queen, so she's kind of trying to regain her throne, but there's people in the way who are trying to stop her. There are a lot of things I really liked about this book. I went into this book really liking it. Like, the plot and everything hooked me right away. And I wish I could say the same about the whole entire book, but unfortunately, as the book went on, I just started to get more and more disinterested in it. And the problem with this book is that it's so incredibly slow. And that's the reason why I gave it such a low rating, because it felt like I was reading a lot and nothing was happening and nothing exciting was happening, and it was just really frustrating. So that was the biggest downfall of this book. I do like the characters, however. I did like Kelsey, who was trying to get into the position to become queen and regain her throne. And I liked a lot of the side characters too, so the characters were spot on, but I think the pacing was just really weak for me, and it was really hard for me to get into it. And I think the biggest mistake I made is I read this book for a readathon, which was such a huge mistake, because this is not the type of book you should read during a readathon. You need to take your time reading this book because it's so dense, and it's more of like a higher fantasy. So I really wish I wouldn't have picked this up during a readathon. I should have taken my time reading it. If I had, maybe I would have liked it a bit more, but I unfortunately just didn't love it, but there were some things I did like about it. I would not consider ever continuing off the series though, because I have no interest to. And I gave this book a 2.5 out of 5 stars. Next I have Neck and Neck. Neck and Neck by Lee Sun-hee. I read this during the Get Graphic readathon and ended up really enjoying it. So this book, or first volume to a manga series, is about a girl who is the daughter of a crime boss. So her father has a ton of enemies because of that. So she starts a new school, and there she meets this boy who she later finds out is the son of her father's enemy. And they end up hating each other right off the bat. And that's all this volume goes into so far, but I'm sure the rest of the volumes go into more, and I'm really looking forward to reading the rest of this series later on. I, as I said, really enjoyed this. I didn't expect to love this as much as I did, but me being someone who really loves shoujo manga, it seems like every shoujo manga I pick up I love, so I should have expected to like this. I've had this book on my TBR shelf for like 2 years. I got it originally off of Book Outlet, and I didn't really have any interest in picking it up then, but I finally had a reason to during the Get Graphic readathon, and I'm so glad I did. And I'm really looking forward to continuing on with this series. And I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. The next one I have to share is the first graphic novel that I actually ended up loving, because I've had such bad luck with graphic novels, and that is Super Mutant Magic Academy by Gillian Tamaki. I also picked this one up for, I think it was, yeah, I did pick it up during the Get Graphic readathon. And I went into this book with very low expectations, because every graphic novel I've read I really didn't like. I had considered originally just to stop reading graphic novels altogether, because I'm like, maybe they're just not for me. And then this one comes along and gives me hope in graphic novels again. I loved this graphic novel. It's about this school where mutant kids go, and it's really just about the everyday things that teenagers go through. This graphic novel is different in the fact that it reads more of like a comic series, like comic strips like you would see in like the newspaper. So that was really different about it. It's not a cohesive storyline, which is kind of weird that I actually like it, because I like books with like a cohesive storyline. But this one doesn't have that. It's mostly just about like certain things that teenagers go through, and like one strip of a page will go into one specific thing. So it was really different in that way, but I loved it because it was so hilarious. This book is so relatable. Of course, I'm not a teenager anymore, but when I was a teenager, I went through a whole ton of these things, and they were just so relatable in that way. And the fact that it's about mutant kids with like weird powers and it's still relatable, like, I love that. I love the humor in it. I would definitely consider rereading this again, and I would highly recommend it if you are into graphic novels, because this is the first one that I've actually liked. Of course, it's not the best thing I've ever read, so I give it a 4 out of 5 stars, but that's still a good rating, and this book really gave me hope that I can read graphic novels and actually like them. So I'm really looking forward to reading more graphic novels now. Next, I have You're in My Secret by I. Longoria. This is another reread that I picked up during the Get Graphic readathon. And I wanted to continue on with this series, but I kind of forgot what happened here, so I thought I'll pick this book up during this readathon, and I ended up loving it as much as I did the first time. This series is so funny. It's about this boy and girl who accidentally switch bodies, and a lot of funny things pursue from there. And because of the concept of this book, you know it's going to be hilarious, and it definitely is, and I really love the characters and the humor that is in it, and I'm really looking forward to really soon continuing on this series and seeing what happens next. And it's a shoujo manga that I would highly recommend. I never hear anyone talk about it. I originally got this one off a book outlet as well on a whim, and I'm glad I did because I really ended up loving it, and I'm really glad I got to reread it again. And I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars. The next 3 books are a part of a series that I finished in 1 month, which never happens. I never finish a whole series in 1 month. And they were all rereads. And the first 2 books in the series were rereads, so those were easy. And the next one was one that came out in October that I was anticipating, and that is the Forget Tomorrow trilogy. I talk about this trilogy a lot, and I absolutely love it. I reread the first 2 books in anticipation for the 3rd book so I can refresh my memory on it, and I gave these both 5 stars. I originally gave them 5 stars the first time I read it, so it was no different. And then I got 2 C's today, which is the 3rd book in this series, and ended up really enjoying it. This book follows a different character. Each book in this series follows a different character. This one follows Olivia, which is the chairwoman, who is the president of this company called Fuma's daughter. And Olivia is a precognitive, which means she can foresee the future and different paths that a person's future can take. So she gets a glimpse of this boy's rider's future, and his future shows him killing her. So this book is very suspenseful, just as suspenseful as the other books were. It kept me on the edge of my seat, and I really loved it. I love the main character in this book, Olivia. We got to see her throughout all the other books, but in this book we of course got to know her a lot more since this book was told through her perspective, and I really loved her. She's a very shy, kind of timid character, so she was very relatable to me because she shares a lot of the same qualities that I have, and I just really love reading about her. And I'm super sad that this series is over because I just want it to continue. Not that the conclusion wasn't great, because it really was. I love the epilogue in it. It was so cute. But I just want more because I love it so much. But this is the last book. But I really enjoyed this series. I'm glad I got to finish it this month, and I would highly recommend you start this dystopian trilogy because it is so good. And the last 3 books are my favorite books I read this month. I don't think any other book can top this series because I just can't ever see it happening. So of course I just knew this was going to be my favorite books I read this month, and that is Ouran High School Host Club volumes 3, 4, and 5. I am still rereading this series. I want to continue rereading them throughout the months, and I got to read 3 of them this month, so that was a huge success. And I honestly can't give these an individual rating. I feel like this whole series for me is just going to be a 5-star rating because I don't know how to rate each volume because there are only a few chapters in each volume, so I'm just going to round them all up to 5 stars in total for this series. But I love the series. As I said, I'm still rereading it. And if you guys don't know what the shoujo manga series is about, it's about this girl named Haruhi who gets accepted into this very prestigious rich school because she gets good grades, so she gets a scholarship. So her first day there, she's looking for a quiet place to study, and she goes into this abandoned music room, but there she finds the host club, which is a group of boys who entertain girls by visiting them and giving them like tea and sweets and just talking to them. And while she's there, she breaks an expensive vase. So because of that, she has to pay off her debt. So the host club decides to have her be a member of the host club in order to pay off her debt. And it is a super hilarious series. A lot of just crazy stuff goes on in this. I love each of these characters. They're so well done and just so relatable, and it's really easy to get invested in their stories. So I'm looking forward to continuing reading this series, and I'm really hoping to review it soon, so I really need to finish the series soon. So that was my October wrap-up. Again, I'm so happy I got to read so many books this month. Like, I still can't even believe it. And I'm hoping in November I'll get to break my record of most books read in a month, because I actually have a ton of books planned to read in November, like more than I did so in October. So we'll see how that goes. And thanks for watching. If you liked the video,